Welcome to our second 2024 Getting to Know Your Indiana Neighbor. It was a little more than a year ago that I had on his daughter, Angie, and it was right before her son Cam was going through surgery. And I know later on you'll talk about your grandkids, we'll talk about Cam. But our very special guest is Dr. Larry Sutton. Dr. Sutton, thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
And even though he's an Indiana neighbor, you're not an Indiana native, right?
No.
Where were you born?
Michigan.
Michigan. All right. We're at Michigan.
I was born in Flint, Michigan, but I grew up in Lapeer, Michigan, and then later moved to North Branch, Michigan.
And is that that's where you grew up? That's where you went to school? So we're going to find out how he came to Lagodi, Indiana at some point in this conversation. But let's go back to your childhood in Michigan, and let's talk about your parents. Who were your parents? Are they still with us? Are they not with us?
They're both gone. My mother died probably about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And she was 92 when she died. Grew up on a dairy farm in Michigan.
A dairy farm.
Right.
Did you work that farm?
Yeah.
You did?
That's why I didn't become a farmer, because I hated milking those cows.
Is that right? What else did you do on the dairy farm?
We did all our chores. We, worked the fields and stuff, and grew our own corn and oats and things to feed the animal, and alfalfa for the animals and stuff like that.
So your father was a lifetime farmer? Mm-hmm. Okay.
And his dad was a farmer. Our family, the Sutton family, goes back to 1856 in Lapeer County, Michigan, and stuff like that.
Okay. Did your mom work outside of the farm?
She did for a little bit. She worked as a nurse's aide and for a while, a period of time. But most of the time she was at home. And then she also worked as a cook at school at North Branch, and everybody loved her. She loved to cook. That's our big thing. We always had big family meals and things like that on Sundays and holidays and things like that.
So you were a small town boy, rural boy.
Real, yeah. Both North Branch has probably got about the same size as Lagodi.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What was your first experience of a big city? Detroit or somewhere around there?
I went to college in Elkhart, Indiana, which is a bigger city and stuff like that.
Well, wait a minute. You mean until college, Elkhart might have been the biggest city that you've been in?
Right.
All right. Boy, you were a rural boy, weren't
Right.
you? Okay. All right. Well, when you were a boy growing up in the farm, did you have any brothers and sisters to help out?
Yes, there was 6 of us all together.
Oh,
I had 3 sisters and 2 brothers. My brother that's close to me is only 15 months difference as far as that goes, so we were pretty close, and obviously we got to do the chores together as far as that goes. Usually what happens in the morning is my brother and I would go out and feed the calves and bust the water out of the water tank and do those chores before we went to school. And then when we got home at night, then we did the milking, and then my dad fed the calves and stuff in the evening and stuff. So that was kind of the routine all the way through school.
Was your dad pretty strict about your chores, make
Yes.
sure you get things done?
Yeah, very much.
So
we milked about 40 cows twice a day. So,
oh my gosh.
So that was about a 2-hour deal once I get home, and my brother and I both went into sports, and by the time we get home from practice and grab something to eat and then go to the barn to do chores and stuff, not much time for studying. So I was kind of a C student while I was in high school.
Okay, making excuses already, but that's all right. That's a C student. Hey, that's average, right?
It was average student.
It turned out pretty good. Spoiler alert. But was your father, was that his business, the dairy farm? Mm-hmm. Was it a lucrative business for him, or was it something where he really had to struggle just to provide for you?
Well, my dad was very penny pincher.
Okay.
And I guess maybe that's why I've been that way a little bit. But he hardly ever bought any equipment brand new. He would go to auction sales and stuff and find things. And he wanted to, like if we got a car, he paid cash for it. He wasn't going into loans and stuff. So I think that's part of the reason he never got into any of a credit problem or anything. So we are always, I don't think I'd say we're lower middle class probably is what we probably were growing up.
And most people in that area probably were about the same, right?
Right.
Yeah. What was your father's name?
John,
And your mother's name?
Betty.
And when would we've lost your dad?
My dad died in '97. He had a tractor roll over the top of him and
No
killed
kidding.
him.
No kidding.
I remember being in the office. My brother called me about 4:30 in the afternoon. It was on Halloween of '97, and that was a big shocker and stuff like that. He was 72 years old.
Is that in Michigan?
Yeah,
Wow.
on the farm.
On the farm?
Yeah.
Wow. Tractor rolled over on him.
And my brother found him, and of course he was already dead when he found him, and so then we had a funeral to go to.
Wow, that's tragic. Siblings still with us?
Yes, I've got two brothers. One brother's still on the farm. He doesn't milk cows anymore, but he still runs the farm and stuff and puts up crops.
At the home place there?
Yes.
In Michigan? Okay.
Yes. And my youngest brother, and then I have two sisters. One sister was a farm wife that's retired now as far as I go. Another sister was worked in the bank as a loan officer and stuff like that. And then the other sister is a optician. She helps with fitting glasses and stuff like that for an optometrist and stuff.
All right. So you said that you and your brother were close and you were in sports. What sports did you compete in?
I was in basketball and baseball.
Pretty good?
Oh, I played pretty good in basketball and played first base, and
Okay.
I'm left-handed, so limited. I did play a little outfield, but I
Yeah.
played first base most of the time.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So
I'll tell you one thing unique. My junior year, I didn't get to play. I played mainly junior varsity when I was a junior, but we averaged 88 points a game.
oh my goodness.
We had 5 games over
No
100.
three-point shot.
No
Right.
three-point shot
No.
either.
No.
So that's pretty wild and stuff. So
Yeah.
that
Wow.
we-
Did you win the state championship or
No,
anything?
we got beat by Mount Pleasant Sacred Heart in Michigan, which was a parochial school.
Yeah.
They had 2 kids from Indiana and a kid from Ohio on it, and their average starting front line was like 6'6". So we kind of got bowled over by them.
Yeah. So at what point did you say, this farming thing's not for me. This isn't going to be my occupation. And at what point did you feel like you might have an idea of what your occupation would be?
Well, I really like history, and I had kind of gotten pre-enrolled at Michigan State University to go there. And my guidance counselor was talking to me. He said, "Larry, history teachers are a dime a dozen. You're really good in science." He says, "My next door neighbor is a lab tech, and you're really good in science. Would you consider being a lab tech?" And he says, "If you want, we'll go over to his house and talk to him about it and see what it was." Well, he went to, it was a 2-year school in Elkhart, Indiana. I got an associate degree there in medical technology, and that's where I met Julie there. So we got married about right before we were getting ready to graduate. We got married.
So you moved to Elkhart, Indiana, right after high school.
Right.
Right. Was that a 2-year plan or a 4-year plan? And you met Julie. Circumstances around that. How'd you meet her?
It was funny is there was a group of us that would go for coffee every day in between classes, and there was about 4 girls and 3 guys. And we were doing, well, Julie went to high school at a convent. So she was
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit. Go ahead.
She was a little naive, so we were there to kind of say, hey, because she was talking about dating some guys, and we kind of told her, well, this guy's got a bad reputation or something like that. So we were probably buddies for the first year. I mean, we just kind of took her under our wings so that she wouldn't be getting into trouble with anybody and stuff.
Where was she from? Was she from Elkhart?
No, she was from Goodland, Indiana.
Goodland, Indiana? Okay. And
she was pre-enrolled to go to Purdue, so it's kind of interesting. Both of us were thinking about going to Big Ten schools, and then switched to go to Elkhart, which I thought was kind of ironic.
Yeah, but I don't want to pass over that point. She went to high school in a convent. Explain a little more. High school in a convent.
Yeah. It was in Mishawaka, Indiana, and she went all 4 years there. Yeah. She was the valedictorian of her class. And decided she wanted to go in the medical field. And so I don't know how for sure she found out about Elkhart, but then she wound up coming to Elkhart at the same time as I did.
Okay. So was she studying to be a nun at any given point?
Well, at that time in high school, she had to make a decision what she was going to do, and she decided that she did not want to be a nun at that point in time.
Okay. So she decided she wasn't going to be a nun. She went to Elkhart and married a future doctor.
Right.
Pretty good story right there. Well, Elkhart, lab tech.
Yeah.
So that got you into the medical field, and
Right.
that was your gateway. And
Then we had to do an internship for a year after we got done with our class. And so we both went to Grand Rapids, Michigan. And
married already? Married at this point?
Married at this point. And then I worked in Grand Rapids for 4 years. And then we had a couple of kids during that time when Mark and Angie came along. And then my two bosses, or the two pathologists that ran the lab at the hospital, took a teaching job at a medical school in Missouri. And the school in Missouri was not up to date as far as the lab was concerned. So they took 3 of us from Grand Rapids to Missouri. So that's how I wound up in Missouri, was taking that job. And then I was head of the chemistry section at the medical school and stuff in the hospital that was part of the university there.
But were you at that point on track to be a physician?
No,
Or, no,
not at all. But I wound up teaching some at the medical school, the lab part, and stuff like that with the students and stuff. And frankly, I have to tell you that for a while, I did a little bit of making out schedules for the lab. And there was 46 women and 8 men that worked there. And I got a little tired of that. So let's say that I came home to Julie one day, I says, they're driving me crazy, I got to do something different. So I said, do you mind if I go ahead and apply for medical school? And of course, the 2 doctors I worked for put in a good word for me. And I did pretty good in college too. I finally buckled down with that and did well with that. I graduated magna cum laude and stuff like that.
Well, let's go back to high school for a second, because the little homework that I did, even though you were a C student, I found that your SAT score was amongst the top in the entire nation. Is that fair to say?
Right.
How does that happen?
I don't know. They accused me of circling all B's or something.
Yeah, just something.
But it was funny, is during the awards banquet, only 2 of us got that scholarship. One was the valedictorian, me, so the valedictorian goes down and gets it. Yeah. And I didn't know I was even getting this thing, and I'm up on the top row of the bleachers, and they're trying to knock me down, teasing me when I go down to accept the scholarship, because they're going, how in the heck did he do this, So it was kind of a hysterical type thing, and I got ribbed for that for quite a while.
So you just, you were busy, I know, in high school, and it just wasn't your thing, classes just wasn't?
Well, we just didn't have time. I mean, when I'd go to bed, I'd come in from doing chores at 9:30 or 10 o'clock, and then, I have to get up at 5 o'clock to do chores again. I was just too tired to really study and stuff like that.
Did your parents accept that, though, that, hey, you're not applying yourself as to what you could, but you're doing what you need to do here at home, right? They were okay with that.
They needed the slave labor.
Okay, all right. So C student's fine, and I can relate to that. A C student's not bad, just it could be better, that's all. All right. Yeah. So you get this award, and like you said, you were probably one of the most surprised.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But you knew that you could apply yourself. You knew that, well, maybe you didn't, because
maybe I did retain something.
Yeah, maybe. So now you're in Missouri. You decide you don't want to schedule. And what's next? Because you just quit that work?
Yep.
All right, what'd you do next?
Then started medical school.
Just started medical
school. Now, the
other
thing is I finished out my degree in Kirksville, Missouri at what was then called Northeast Missouri State University, but now it's called Truman State University after Harry Truman, after President Truman. And I got my bachelor's degree from there. And so it took me 3 years to get my bachelor's done once we moved to Missouri. And I worked there for 4 years. So, the year before I applied to medical school, I finally got my bachelor's degree done.
Was Julie working during this time?
No.
No.
Julie did not start working.
You had a couple of kids. Yeah.
She did not even drive a car.
Okay.
So she never learned how to drive a car. Her dad took her out in the country a couple times, but that didn't go well either. We tried it once because the car we initially had was a stick shift. And you can imagine somebody trying to learn how to stick shift.
Especially today, yeah.
So, when it came down that she was going to go back to work and I was going to be a student, she was going to have to learn to drive a car. So she worked really hard and got her license and stuff like that. And then she went to work as a lab tech at the school. So it had been 8 years since she had worked as a lab tech and stuff that she went back in and went to school and helped support us while when I was going through school.
You know, I mean, that's an expensive adventure, right? Medical school. But you did it, you and Julie did it all on your own, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
We had flipped a house while we were there. When we bought a very nice house that was in where a lot of the professors at the university lived. A medical student had the house, but she kind of let it run down in the 4 years that she was there and stuff. And so we bought it and got it for a really good price because she was wanting to sell it real quick since she was leaving and going to Florida or someplace. And so we fixed the house up and we made about $14,000 or $15,000 on it. And we used that from our first year tuition and stuff towards, helping support us to go to school and stuff.
so you were obviously handy in that way. You could do things around the house.
Yeah,
enough to
mainly
fix
it was the, putting in new carpeting, which we had done, and then us painting the house and stuff like that. And she's very handy with that. She's more handy at that sort of stuff than I am.
So whenever that house became available, that was the idea that, hey, let's get this, let's make a little money to put toward medical school?
No. I hadn't even decided to go to medical school when we bought that house and stuff. I think we bought that house in about 76, and I didn't start medical school until 78.
Okay, all right. Now, sometime I'm a nosy Indiana neighbor, so go back to your courtship with Julie. I always like to ask about the proposal. Sometimes it's interesting, sometimes it's not. Anything unique about your proposal? Anything you want to say?
Well, ask her dad first.
Ask her dad first.
Right, I asked her dad. If it was okay.
Oh, you asked her dad, okay.
All right, if I could marry his daughter.
Yeah. Were you nervous?
Yeah, pretty nervous and stuff like that.
What if he would have said no?
Well, I don't know. We probably eloped or something.
Okay, right. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Right.
Okay.
And then, when I got her the ring and stuff, which was a kind of a stupid stunt, but we were being kind of silly that day. I put it in my mouth, and when I kissed her, I gave her the ring.
Okay. Now that is the first time I've heard that, and I hope it's the last. To be honest,
Right.
How did she feel?
Been bad if she'd choked.
Yeah. Did she didn't know it was coming?
No, she had no idea.
Oh my goodness gracious! Did it work out well?
Yeah.
The transfer was good.
Yeah.
And she's like, "What the heck is this?"
Right.
And
Our big problem is we wanted to.
do your kids know that story, by the way?
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And she still can't believe I did that, which
Yeah.
was kind of. But it was one of those goofy nights and stuff, and everybody was joking around doing things, and it was kind of a spur of the moment thing that I thought, well, that was pretty stupid after I did it. She could have choked the ring and died.
But she appreciated the gesture, I guess,
Right,
at the time.
right,
Okay.
right.
And she knew once that ring transferred that was you asking her to marry her.
Right.
Not getting on your knees. Yeah. Okay.
We had talked about it before that.
Yeah.
That what it was going to be like and stuff
Okay.
like that, and where we were going to live and stuff like that, because at the time when we got engaged, we hadn't figured out that we were going to Grand Rapids yet.
Okay.
So,
All right. So you're going through medical school at Grand Rapids?
no, in Kirksville, Missouri.
Okay. All right. And how long does it take you to get through medical school to where you can actually go out and get a practice?
Well, you can practice as soon as you graduate, but then you need to do postgraduate work and stuff. And we decided, since she was working, our kids were in school. By the way, we had 4 kids by the time I graduated.
Okay.
And with the kids being in school, 2 were in school and 2 were going to the babysitter. And that was the other fun thing is that she had to be at work at 6 o'clock to draw blood and things. So it was my job to get the kids up. and get them fed and off to the babysitter and off to school and stuff like that. And then, of course, she picked him up. We went to a Catholic school there in Kirksville and stuff like that, so there was no bus or anything. And so that was a deal. I got a kick out of some of my classmates the first couple of years and stuff would come in with hangovers and look like they'd been up all night and their hair all funky looking. And I'm thinking, geez, and you think you got it tough.
Was there any point though, because obviously medical school can be very stressful, especially when you have a wife and 4 kids. Was there at any point where you said, this probably is not the path I need to go?
Well, I think the thing was that since I was a lab tech and had worked for 4 years there at the medical school, I knew a lot of the doctors knew a lot of me from the lab, and obviously the language and all that sort of stuff and how we do the testing and all that stuff, I already knew that. Where these kids that come in with a philosophy degree or something like that, it's all new for them. They've got to pick up all the nomenclature and everything to use. So it was not really hard. I did fairly well.
And your internship was done where?
There too.
There too.
I stayed at the hospital there. So
for a year?
Yeah.
What's next? Looking for a job?
Lagodi.
Lagodi's next, right after that.
See, I went the last 2 years. We took out loans for my second year. Then we were trying to figure out what we're going to do my last 2 years that I had to pay. So we went with the public health service, and you had to go to a doctor shortage area. And I was wanting somewhere in Indiana, so we got into the Midwest thing, and they had a symposium type thing in Indianapolis, and then they invited all these hospital administrators to come up there if they were looking for medical students to hire to come to their hospital. And I just happened to be in Chicago for that meeting, and Mr. Schaefer, who at the time was the administrator at Washington, was there doing his song and dance about coming there, and explained to me that Dr. Lett had just died and they were looking for somebody to fill his role in Lagodi, and Martin County was designated as a doctor shortage area because at that point in time there was Dr. Beamblossom, Dr. Poirier, and another doctor with Dr. Poirier, but I can't remember what his name was right now, but he was only there for a short time, and we were it for the county and stuff like that.
Yeah. So why Indiana though? Because of Julie's connection?
Probably, yeah, because they were parents and stuff. And we kind of decided, since she lived in northern Indiana and the weather and the snow and stuff like that, we kind of took Indianapolis or south as our cutoff. And so I interviewed at like 4 places altogether and stuff. And I liked the fact that Jan Martin was still working at the clinic.
Jan Martin, yeah.
And so she knew who the patients were. Yeah. Me, the new guy right out of school. Yeah. And then the first 2 years I worked for the hospital just so I could figure out what the business part of the thing was. And so they supplemented me for the first 2 years and stuff. And then we did it on our own until 97. Then we built the clinic out on the highway and stuff. And then I went to work for the hospital at that point in time.
What year did you come to Lagodi?
83.
83. And you were in, were you not, Doc Lett's old office to begin with?
Right.
Okay.
Until about 95 or something like 94, 95. What happened is Dr. Webb in Odin approached me with being a partner because he had his office in Odin and I had mine in Lagodi. And he was going to rent like a treadmill machine to do stress tests on, a colonoscope, doing sigmoidoscopies and things. And he thought it'd be good if I could come up there one day a week and do procedures, and that would help him as far as not having to pay the full rent on these things. So we did that, and the problem with that is he left after we did that for a year. So now I'm stuck with 2 offices, and we decided that things weren't working out of Lagodi as far as the practice site was concerned, and so we moved to Odin. And we were there for, I think, 2 years, and then they built the clinic out on the highway. And then Dr. Potts came, and Dr. Potts and I would switch back and forth between Lagodi and Odin. And then we had 2 nurse practitioners, and there would be a nurse practitioner in both places. And
So-
that seemed to work out pretty good.
So if I understand that right, you were in Lagodi, but the practice wasn't working out there.
Right.
So for a period of time, you weren't in Lagodi.
Right.
I don't remember that. Okay.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
I think for 3 years, I think I wasn't in Lagodi. And that's just because the practice site wasn't working out.
Okay. As a young doctor, do you remember your first patient by chance? If not by name, the circumstance.
I can tell you that probably my most unique patient is an Amish gentleman came in. We worked Saturdays from 8 o'clock until noon.
Yeah.
And it was just first come, first serve. You signed in and
Just sat down,
at noon came because I had to go to the hospital and make rounds after I got done. And you would be the first one on Monday. That was kind of Dr. Chatton gave me that idea that, when you're done, you say, well, okay, you 4 that didn't get through today, you'll be the first ones on Monday type thing.
But doc.
Yeah, I know, but you might have 20-some
That's
people
right.
in there.
You'd always be there, yeah.
Right. So anyways, so about 11:45, somebody comes to the back door. Julie goes back and lets them in, and these 2 guys bring this guy in, and the back door at the Lagodi office was where we kind of did our trauma room, where if I had to sew somebody up or take an x-ray or something like that, that was it. So they bring this guy in and lay him on the table, and I'm in seeing some other people, and Jan says, come here, you got to look at this guy's leg. And so I go in there, and he'd cut his leg with a chainsaw. And of course, it was all ragged and stuff. And so I told Jan, I said, well, give him a tetanus shot, and we'll bandage him up, get the bleeding to stop, and we'll call the ambulance. He said, I'm not going to pay for an ambulance to go to the hospital.
Right.
And I said, well, I can't sew muscles back together. You're going to have to. And he says, well, you do the best you can because I'm not leaving here. So we spent about 3 hours working on this guy's leg and getting it back together. And the funny thing is, about 5 years later, he brings his grandson in to see me. And I didn't remember his face. And he said, do you remember me? And I said, I think so. You look familiar. He says, you sewed my leg up from a chainsaw thing. Oh, I said, yeah. And the thing is, I told him he had to come in every day for a week and get a penicillin shot and have me look at the leg and make sure it's healing okay.
And he didn't.
So he pulls his pants down and shows me. He's got this big scar and big dent in his leg, but he said, I can still kick and do everything and climb stairs and ladders and stuff.
Yeah.
I said, it's a miracle and stuff. And I told Jan, I said, we'll never ever do anything like that again.
So you were a young doctor then.
Yeah, I've only been there about 2 weeks.
Yeah, so you learned quickly not
Yes.
to do that. But wow. I thought you were going to say that you told him you'll be the first one on Monday, but no, you didn't want to.
No,
do
I
that.
didn't do
Right.
that.
Okay. So you mentioned Julie. Julie worked there with you, right?
Right.
Okay. But how difficult was it being a doctor whenever the hours that you had, not only whatever regular hours if you had any, I'm sure you had to be called in on different times. How difficult was that on the family?
Well, it's really hard the first 2 years because I did OB too.
You did?
Yes. But only the first 2 years. As soon as that was part of the deal with the public health thing, that you're going to be a full service physician.
Okay.
And at that point in time, there was no OB-GYN doctor at Washington. All the babies were delivered by general practitioners, and then the surgeons, if they had to have a C-section, the surgeons would come in and do the C-sections. So that was very stressful on that, and that's about the time when Mark was kind of getting into sports and stuff, because he was in the 6th grade when we moved here. Your brother was one of his best friends when we first moved here.
I remember you coming down to visit, I think meeting you for the first time in our home.
Right.
And maybe even for dinner, I can't recall, but yes, Mark and Chris were very, very good friends.
Right. They were his first friends, and your mom and dad invited him over, so that was his first person he met here at Lagodi.
Yeah, sorry to hear that, but no, that was a great thing, and that's what small towns do, right? You have to find connections. But I just, things go in my mind whenever you said that you were an OB and you delivered babies. You can observe, you can whatever all you want, but that first baby, You have to be just,
little nervous.
and you can't show it, right? You can't show that you're shaking, but do you remember that first delivery?
Yeah. Now the good thing is when I was in training all the way through, I did quite a few rotations with obstetrics because I was going to do that.
Okay.
So I had helped to deliver quite a few babies. Right. And then the doctor let me do everything. He just stood there and watched me and stuff like that. So, I'd probably delivered 30 or 40 babies before I had to do my first one by myself.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Very good. I remember asking Dr. Poirier this question too, because I can imagine still today, but I'm sure through all of those years that you practiced, it didn't matter whether you were at the grocery store, at a ball game, or what have you. Somebody had to come up to you and say, I got a little tweak here, or my son's got a cough. It's got to get old, doesn't it?
Right. Well, that's ironic that you bring this up because I went to the IGA one Sunday morning and stuff to get donuts and newspaper and stuff like this. And there's an Amish gentleman there, and his son had a ringworm.
Oh, okay.
On his posterior.
Oh, okay.
And he wanted to show me.
Right there in the IGA? Right there in the IGA. Yeah, near like the fruit and stuff. Yeah. Okay.
So I told Julie, I said, no more Sunday. You're going to be the one.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, you probably need to send Julie on those little
And
errands.
I did that.
Yeah. What's the most rewarding thing you think about in your profession, in your career, about being a physician?
All the friendships of people, all the patients and people that I've met, been probably very rewarding and stuff like that. And watch, little kids growing up to have kids. I've seen 3 generations of people and stuff go through that. The sad part is the people you saw when you took care of them were in their 30s and 40s, now are in their 60s and 70s and got all kinds of health problems and stuff like that. You feel bad about that,
Well, the other thing, kind of to add on to that, you have elderly patients through all of those years that I'm sure there are at times that that this person isn't going to last long. And I'm sure that's got to weigh on you a little bit too, because you've known them, you've treated them for years, and now, they're gone. So that had to be difficult too, right?
Right. Yeah. It was hard a lot of times going to the going to the funeral home and, have the wife and stuff and things like that. They'd give me a little teary-eyed on a few of them if I'd taken care of them for like 30 years,
Anything in particular that you remember that just kept you up at night? Maybe it was a certain event, maybe it was a situation like that, but just kept you up at night to where you just couldn't sleep because you were stressed about that particular situation?
The OB part was probably my most stressful because, the nurses would be calling me and you don't know when things are due, and they'd be calling me every 30 minutes or so to tell me how much they're progressing and stuff like that, So I had a few days where I had to have a little extra caffeine in the morning to get me going again.
Yeah, because you don't know whether you're going to be able to get a nap in or not.
Right. And a lot of times I just went to the hospital, so I wasn't even home. So they had an on-call room at the hospital.
That was Washington, Davis County Hospital?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So how many years did you practice overall?
Well, I've just retired in December, so it's 40 years at the hospital. I did 30 years of my medical practice, and then for the last 19 years, I've been medical director in the rehab unit down at the hospital that takes care of people after strokes and after they had a hip replacement or something like that.
But today you're still involved, right? You health director, is that what you said?
I'm Martin County Health Officer. When Dr. Bean Blossom died in '96, I was president of the health board, and they said, "You are now the new health officer."
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And so as soon as they made me health officer, I said, "Dr. Poirier, you now are the president of the health board." And I've asked him if he'd wanted to do it one of these days, and he said, "No, I don't want to do that." But we're both really committed because a lot of the things with him being president of the health board, with a lot of our decisions and stuff, the two of us kind of work that out.
Yeah. You might think in a small town you've got 2 prominent doctors in Dr. Poirier and Dr. Sutton that, okay, you're competing for business, but as you said, you didn't have enough doctors to begin with. And I don't know your relationship, but it sounds like you were very good friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We relate real well to each other and stuff. Yeah. And we have similar problems that we talk about and stuff to get done.
Oh, I'll bet nobody else you can relate to, right?
Right.
Yeah. So what's the responsibilities of the health officer?
We're in charge of like all the restaurant inspections. We do all the sewer inspections. Of course, we got the birth and death records over there. Then we also are in charge of with the immunizations. I'm trying to think what the other thing is. But anyways, we stay busy with that. Now, I only go over there 1 day a week and put in.
Over there is where?
In Shoals.
In Shoals.
The health department's on Water Street in
Yeah.
Shoals.
Oh, I've been there. Especially during COVID.
Right.
Yeah.
So where you got your COVID shot.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
What was the deciding factor for you to finally retire? Was there a time that you said, this is the time I'm going to retire? I know insurance is something that's very difficult. Was it the family? What was the deciding factor?
well, part of it is the ongoing continuing education stuff that we have to have so many hours every year, and the state or the government, mainly the state, on this opioid thing, as far as the fentanyl and the problem we had with the OxyContin problem, where the big suit of that, where the salesmen were out really pushing the drugs, and stuff like that, the narcotics. And so right now there's I think it's overly onus on us to have to keep with all that medical education. I think some of it's okay, but have to go off to somewhere and get it. Now, some of this stuff I can do online, but a lot of it we had to go somewhere. You spent 8 hours a day in a room listening to somebody lecture and stuff, and some of the stuff is old.
Yeah.
And some of it was new.
Yeah, but you're approaching 75, right?
Going to be 74 in July.
Going to be 70. He's not approaching 75 yet. He's approaching 74. Okay, but people the doctors that you think of, Doc Lett. I mean, basically, I don't know if he retired or not. I don't know.
I think he died.
I think so. I think so. And yourself, Dr. Poirier, you could retire 10 years ago. You could have retired 15 years ago, or whatever it may be. What pushes you to go to an age where, most people are long retired, but you're in the medical field where there's that stress, but yet you stay with it? What pushes somebody to do that?
Some of it because there was a need. The job I was doing at the hospital, nobody else really wanted to do that. I sat in on quite a few different committees where I was the only doctor on the committee and stuff like that. That there's a need, for that stuff. What happens is when I started, all the doctors went to the hospital every day. Now with hospitalists, nobody goes to the hospital. See what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Which is easier, but I had more control of what was going on with my patients, what I felt would be their blood pressure medicine, or this arthritis medicine would be more appropriate for them. And then they would switch things around, and then I'd say no, because of the side effects, we're going to switch this back. So that sort of thing, So that is one thing I really have noticed is that people need to look at what side effects are and what interacts with other medicines as much. See what I'm saying? So that was one of my big jobs down there. Was if they were on the wrong kind of medicine, kind of switch them around, and then I'd put a note in the chart for the reason why I switched it, because it was doing this. But as an example, people were on gout medicine, but they were taking a diuretic or a water pill that made them have gout. If you change the water pill, then they didn't have to take the gout pill. So that's what we call polypharmacy, where all of a sudden you're on 10 different medications every day. And so my job was to say, is this necessary for them to be on that or not?
Yeah, so, just being a doctor today as compared to when you started, it's got to be so much different from the training or what have you. Would you, let's say that you had a grandchild, and hey, listen, I want to be like Grandpa. I want to go into the medical field. Would you support that? Not support it, you would as a grandfather.
Right.
But would you encourage that?
Well, there's so many other things, I mean, the thing is right now, like with a physician assistant or a nurse practitioner, you make almost the same amount of money, but you don't have quite all of the responsibility as you would. And it, takes quite a bit more time. You're kind of behind the eight ball when you get out, I mean, obviously I was 32 years old before I could even think about, or 33 years old before I could even think about saving any money,
Yeah.
Plus, about that time, Angie and Mark are going to college.
Yeah, that's what she said in ours. That when she moved here, people thought, well, here comes a doctor's child, and privileged and what have you. And she said that was, furthest from the truth, right? And you could understand that. Most people, I don't know about your case, but I would think most of them are still trying to pay off their medical bills for years before they can make any money.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if that's your case. But
Yeah, let's see. That second year we borrowed money, and so I was paying off my loans plus paying for my kids' schooling at the same time, and so we paid that out of our pocket. Plus, Julie and I paid our own schooling when we were at Elkhart too. Our parents didn't do anything there, so while we were working, we were paying those loans off. So it seemed like I was probably behind the eight ball until like 1983, anyways.
Yeah. So we're retired for the most part, and I want to get into your hobby and your family. But is there anything up to this point, any stories that we missed that we want to go back to that you feel would be interesting, or have we covered your first, I guess, 70-some years of your life?
Right. I enjoy things. I like, as far as sports are concerned, I like to play golf yet. I'm not very great at it, but I enjoy that and stuff. And, and then hunting has probably been my biggest thing.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So, do you remember, these people aren't going to remember, but you're old enough, the TV show Daktari? You do? Okay. I was like 7 years old. They had a chimpanzee named Judy. That's and Clarence the Cross-Eyed Lion. That was about it. But I think that was in Africa. It wasn't about big game hunting. But when I think about Doctor and Africa, I think of these things that you're doing. Big game hunt. I know it's not just out of the country; it's in the country. But when did you start getting involved in big game hunting, if you will?
Well, of course, in Michigan, the first time I went hunting when I was probably 11 or 12 years, probably 12 years old, my grandparents, they had cottages in northern Michigan. And back then, you could take a week off from school during first week of hunting season. That's a little bit different than nowadays.
Yeah.
And so my dad did not hunt. So it was my uncle's my grandfather. That took me hunting with him. And so that was the first time deer hunting and stuff like that. So that's when I got my first deer. I was probably 14 when I shot the first deer. The other couple of years I kind of just tagged along and went with him and stuff like that.
And that was a thrill?
Yeah,
right?
very
big
big
that
thrill.
Adrenaline? Okay.
Big adrenaline thing. And then we had a few pheasants, so I'd go out in the cornfields, and we had a beagle, but she was gun shy, so you shot one time and she's heading for the house, and you're going to get the bird yourself and carrying the bird back.
I'd get my money back on that beagle. Yeah.
It was funny, is one of my best friends in Boy Scouts was moving to Washington State, so all the way across the country. And he had this beagle, and they felt they didn't want to take it and stuff, so I inherited his dog.
Okay.
But I didn't know it was gun shy until I took it out.
It was a pet.
So that was kind of my extent. And then my father-in-law in Indiana, Benton County, Goodland, Newton County area are big pheasant areas in Indiana. And my father-in-law was an insurance agent up there, so he knew a lot of farmers, and we would do quite a bit of pheasant hunting together once I started dating and got married and stuff. So that was something we did together quite a bit.
Yeah. One thing, I wanted to get Dr. Sutton before, but his daughter Angie would say, oh, he's out somewhere, hunting or what have you, and he'll be back in, I don't know, weeks or what have you. But we're talking about more than pheasants and, all those things. You just, as you said, hey, I finally got I think it was the third, it was the big thing, right? The big catch. So now you're done.
Right. Oh, you mean as far as the Super Slam.
Yeah, the Super Slam, yeah.
10,
Yes.
10 Super Slam.
So us non-hunters, tell us about the Super Slam.
Well, there's a place called GSCO, and I'm trying to think of Grand Slam Orbis something.
Okay.
And that you hear about these hunters that go to go get these Marco Polo sheep and things like that. Well, there's a slam for like sheep, and there's a slam for like deer, and there's a slam for like all the turkeys. Like there's 4 different types of turkeys in the United States. So if you go out west or go to Florida and these things. And they had one that was called a Super 10 Slam. And so after I hadn't planned on doing that, and after I got about 6 or 7 of those animals, I thought, well, I might as well get the other 3. So in December, I finally got the last one, and that was a mountain lion.
A mountain lion.
Right.
How do you transport that back to Indiana? Where were you? Where was this?
This was in Utah.
Okay.
And we had to take it and check it in at the Department of Natural Resources, and they take a tooth out, and then they age that tooth, and then I think they drew some blood, and they check it for genetics and stuff like that, and then at some point in time they'll send me a thing to tell me how old the mountain lion was. And so after we did that, then of course it had been skinned and still had the skull and the hair on the skull and stuff, but he put it in the freezer as soon as we got that checked in, and then I took it on the plane with me and brought it back to Indiana.
Okay. Have to buy a seat or what? Have to buy a seat or what?
No, he's in the overhead.
Yeah.
So, but it was kind of funny is because obviously going through TSA, it went through the x-ray and stuff. And the Oriental guy was one of the TSA gentlemen, and he says, "What is this?"
Yeah.
And so we opened it up, and he looks at it, and I show him a picture on my phone. He says, "You're kidding me." I said, "No." He says, "Can you really do this?" So he goes and gets his supervisor, and the supervisor said, "As long as it's frozen and in a plastic bag, it's fine." So he said, "All right, you're okay going through." So we get on the plane, and as funny as I had some clothes in there with it. And the first plane I got in from Salt Lake City to Denver, it went in the overhead fine. It was a bigger plane. The second plane was a smaller one, and I couldn't get it in there. And of course, this thing probably weighs about 50 pounds now. And so it's all I can do to put it up there, and it's too thick. So I'm taking clothes out of there and putting them in my backpack. And these people are all... So I went to the back of the plane so I wouldn't be holding anybody up. Yeah. So I'm in the back of the plane taking these clothes out, and the stewardess is standing there watching me, kind of giggling about it. So it's all I can do is pick this thing up and put it in the overhead. So anyways, I was sitting on the plane, and I was at the window seat, and the guy sitting in the middle next to me, I was looking at some of my hunting pictures on my phone and stuff, and he says, "Did you get that mountain lion?" I said, "Yeah." And he's going to Indianapolis with me and stuff. He said, "Well, that's kind of neat looking." He said, "How are you getting it home?" I said, "It's right above you."
So it was frozen?
It completely frozen.
Completely frozen, so there was no danger of it thawing out on the plane?
Right.
Okay. All right, you get it home, and now where is it?
It's Pat Ash is the one that's going to do the taxidermy in Montgomery.
Right.
And he's sent it out to a tannery because you have to tan the hide, otherwise the hair will fall off. And then we'll probably get it mounted when it gets back from there.
Do you have a lot of mounts on your home, in your home?
Yeah, I've got my man cave.
Yeah. And is Julie okay with that decorative, the decor?
It's in the garage.
It's in the garage? Okay.
See, I built a 3-stall garage, and 2 stalls I made out of the man cave. And the other stall I keep the truck in, and above the truck is a loft. And I keep all my hunting gear in that loft, and you go up through the man cave to get to the loft over the top of the truck. So everything's out there, so she's not too upset.
Okay. Do you go out there by yourself typically to these sites?
Yes, a lot of times because, I've went elk hunting with guys. Mark and I have been out there twice elk hunting and stuff. Gary Harwood and I have been out there together. Dan Gingrich from Montgomery or Candleburg and stuff. Several guys that I've been out. Galen Graber and I have been out together. So some things where you're the only one that's got the license, then you usually go by yourself.
So you told me your bucket list in that regard is complete. But I mean, come on, still in here, I'm sure it's a hobby, it's a passion. You'll still be hunting, right?
Well, there's deer hunting and,
Yeah.
and turkey hunting.
But do
here.
you see yourself again going out west or going out of the country? And
I kind of got the bucket list now.
Okay.
Hopefully now Julie and I, if she gets to feeling better after her third back surgery, in this one area, that I'd like to do some traveling and take her and stuff since I've been able to do this.
so with your profession, you and Julie really haven't been able to do a lot of traveling over the years?
Where we've done most of our traveling is when I go on the CME or continuing education courses. Like we've been to Maine, a couple times to California, Albuquerque, New Mexico, quite a few different states. Wherever the CME things, Florida and stuff like that, we'll go there for a week. The program might last for 3 days, but we'll probably stay 5 or 6 days.
Yeah.
And then, so we kind of,
So never really taken a true vacation?
not really, we've
the
had some
family,
family
yeah.
deals, like where we went to Panama City
Yeah,
together.
okay, yeah.
We went to Mackinac Island together as a family and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So we've had some good family vacations too.
Okay. All right, let's talk about family a little bit. We talked about Julie, talked about the kids a little bit, at least up until Michigan. And tell me about your children.
Well, Angie's the oldest. She's a elementary school teacher here in town. Been teaching, I would say, probably about 30 years.
I know. Doesn't that make you feel old?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was born 2 weeks and 9 months after we were married, so obviously the
2
honeymoon
weeks
was,
and 9 months. Okay.
so
9 months and 2 weeks, if you okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's over 9 months.
Yeah.
And she's an elementary teacher, and then she has 3 children, Cameron, Luke, and Katie.
Yeah.
And then we have Mark. Mark and Andy have Chelsea and Mallory. And probably everybody knows Chelsea was on the state championship
was.
basketball team.
Yes,
And
she
Mallory's was up there too, but she was a freshman at that point in time. And then Brian has adopted 2 children, and then another child that from his wife's previous marriage. So he's got 3 children.
Where's Brian?
Huh?
Where's Brian?
Brian's in Lagodi.
He's in Lagodi. So
Mark and Brian both work at Crane.
okay.
And then Stephanie, she has 1 child. They live here. They just moved back probably 3 years ago, I think, right now, as far as back from Indianapolis and stuff. So most of Stephanie's is online. She can do most of her work online. Very seldom she has to go anywhere with a lot of software type things. She does a lot of risk management and things like that. So we've got everybody in the county now.
Yeah. So 9 grandchildren, the 4 children, and they're all within shouting distance.
Right.
I mean, how lucky.
We're
how
blessed
fortunate.
with that. Yeah. And they're all very helpful with us, when we have things. Plus, Grammy's always there to help out too. If somebody needs a babysitter real quick or things like that. So
Yeah. So I know Cameron's had his challenges. The family's had his challenges with Cameron, but I mean, there's got to be a special place.
he's a joy though.
Yeah.
He is. He's funny. That's the funny
funny.
thing. He's on the spectrum, but he's very high functioning and jokes around a lot and stuff. And I mean, he like somebody at the IGA, everybody at the IGA knows him and stuff like that.
Everybody in town knows him.
Right.
Yeah, and he enjoys that, doesn't he?
Right.
I saw, I invade Facebook pages, that's no secret. But I saw, I don't know if you were there or not, but Cameron must be a Wheel of Fortune fan. He's a Wheel of Fortune?
Right.
But there was something down at Evansville, a Wheel
Right.
of Fortune, where he was on the wheel, but
He got to spin the wheel.
he got to spin the wheel.
Right.
Okay, you enjoyed that, I guess,
Right,
right?
right.
Okay. I don't guess he won like $10,000.
No.
Okay, all right, okay. Anything that we didn't talk about, it's your forum now that, you look back on and you think, boy, that's crazy, or this is unique, or you don't want to make sure when you get back home that I should have mentioned this or that, which you will.
Right.
But anything you can think of.
Well, the biggest thing, since Julie and I were both from small towns, this wasn't culture shock for us to be here. Me growing up on a farm, and
Yeah.
her dad was a jeweler and an insurance agent in a small town that's smaller, it's probably like Montgomery, that it wasn't culture shock. You know, we just could blend in with people here, you know, and stuff. I tell people I'm probably not the smartest doctor it ever was, but I probably got more common sense than a lot of doctors do.
Yeah. And how much different could it be being a doctor in a large city and a doctor in a small town of, 2,200 people, 2,700 people?
Well, if you lived in Carmel,
Yeah.
you would never see anybody else, unless, there might be people in your neighborhood you would know and stuff, but it'd be so large, it'd be hard where, with church and everything like this. And Julie's been very involved with the church and stuff. In fact, she was a religion director for quite a while in church and stuff like that. So I think that's really helped out that the community has been so close and stuff like that.
You've been married how long?
Well,
Yeah,
be 54 years here in March.
Yeah, wow. Oh, in March. Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Well,
We got married on the 21st, and her birthday's on the 23rd.
that's tough.
She wanted us both to be the same age when we got married, because I don't get.
Boy, she's a planner.
She's a planner.
She's a planner, isn't
She's
she?
a planner.
Yeah. And you know what? She's something else.
It's funny though, is when we got married in Indiana. My dad had to sign our marriage license in Elkhart on the way through to come down for the wedding. He wasn't too happy about that.
Why was that? Why did he have to?
Being a farmer, he didn't want to take that much time off to do that,
Oh, he just had to sign it as part of the procedure. Okay.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
I guess we couldn't have got married unless, because we were both 19 at the time.
Well, so you guys married young. Were your parents opposed to that? Were they okay? Everything was fine?
They both got married when they were young too.
Okay, so they understood. And
I think my mom was 19 or 20 when she got married.
And I'm guessing they fell in love with Julie pretty quickly, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What about your in-laws? Did they fall in love with you pretty quickly?
My father and I, well, we were best friends. I mean, we hunted together, played golf together. I mean, we really were close and stuff like that.
All right.
And her mother was a great lady. Her mother was a nurse, so I pick up some things from her because of all her. She was a nurse during World War II. She didn't go overseas, but she was a nurse here in the United States, and she's had her uniform and stuff. And then my father-in-law, he was in the Navy in World War II and stuff like too. Yeah. So some great stories that we got there.
Yeah. So really, when you think about it, one of the most important people in Lagodi, along with Doc Poirier, but the physicians for 40 years, you said, basically. And we know it's not been easy, but we're so glad that you've done this. And I'm glad you did this because I knew I would get to know you a lot better. And very interesting. The life of a doctor, I can't even imagine, but I'm sure glad you were here.
Right.
Anything else?
Well, things have changed quite a bit, probably about right around 2000. Then we started having hospitalists at the hospital.
Yeah.
So then I didn't have to go to the hospital anymore. So my life was quite a bit easier where I could go in, work 8 to 5 and stuff, and then go home and stuff.
Yeah.
Didn't have to go to the hospital, I think. Now, for 30 years, I worked the emergency room at the hospital every Wednesday night. And when I started there, they didn't have an ER doctor, so all the family practice doctors had to take their turns coming down and working the emergency room. So I'd work from 7 o'clock at night until 7 o'clock in the morning. I usually do it on Wednesdays because back then we took Thursdays off. So if I had to crash and burn the next day, I could or if they let me sleep that night, then I could go play golf or something the next day.
Yeah, I can't imagine the life of an emergency room doctor in particular because you're working those hours, you never know what's going to come.
Right.
It seems like the few times that I've had to go to the emergency room, in the evening, there was always a policeman with somebody, so you have those situations where just, obviously it can get out of hand. I'm guessing you've seen situations like that where it was a little bit precarious to work on someone, but that couldn't have been good for the family, right? When you're there in those hours, and you just don't know what you're going to get,
right?
Right.
You never know.
Life and death
come through the door,
right? And sometimes death,
right?
Even in the emergency room when you have those accidents and things,
right? Yeah, some of these they bring some of the accident victims in that were not viable. You worked on them, but you know, which is kind of hard, you know, especially somebody you know. That's tough, you know.
Yeah. So obviously no names, but you have then ambulances have brought people in, and you knew those people,
Right.
and basically they didn't make it.
Right.
Wow. Yeah. I don't know how you survived that, but I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you did this.
All right.
And I thank you so much. And he doesn't have Facebook, so he really has no idea what we're doing here. But his family will have it forever. I'll say that much. And it's a terrific story. And being in a position in a small town, you should write a book.
Yeah.
Thought about that?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of some of the stories I've told about my hunting stories, I could probably write 7 or 8 chapters in a book just about those things, you know.
Okay.
But small town physician, that would be a thing.
That would be a thing.
I'm sure there's been a lot of them over the years and stuff too.
All right. Dr. Larry Sutton, not an Indiana native, but certainly our Indiana neighbor. Thanks for watching. The story doesn't end with Dr. Sutton just yet. After we stopped videotaping, I talked to Dr. Sutton, and he was telling me how much of a rock that Julie was, his wife, and that she doesn't get the credit where credit is due all the time. And if you look at this video, there's not a lot of photos of Julie. That's really by her own preference. If you know Julie, she is as beautiful, of course, as she is inside and out, and as humble can be. So she prefers to stay behind the scenes. But when you're a physician's wife, you're front and center, right? All of those late nights at the emergency room, on call, long hours, going through medical school with 2 small children. And Dr. Sutton wanted me to make sure that we got the message out to you that she's the glue that kept them together. As I mentioned, the rock, and does not get enough credit. You can imagine what it took going through medical school and becoming the doctor that he was, now a retired physician. So, Julie, sorry to embarrass you, but the story isn't just Dr. Sutton, it's Dr. and Julie Sutton. And now I think we're done. Thanks for watching this edition of Your Indiana Neighbor.